gotten the opportunity to discuss former Alabama players that made some serious bank at the NFL Scouting Combine and Pro Day. Also dove into Butch Jones and how Alabama football intends to help the former University of Tennessee head coach revive his career. And as we return on In My Own Words, the podcast Touchdown Alabama magazine, Stephen M. Smith, we transition to graduate transfer quarterback Gardner Minshew, who is expected to be in Tuscaloosa, the University of Alabama, in May to start summer workouts, fall camp, in the 2018 college football season. Minshew at 6'2", 216 pounds, out of Brandon, Mississippi. If you checked out the article from Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports and also Sports Illustrated, he talked about how Minshew wants to be with the best, compete with the best, be a part of a championship atmosphere, and how he has admirations to be a coach upon the end of his playing days. And Alabama now able to get its fourth quarterback on the roster for the 2018 season. Minshew, prior to going to ECU, East Carolina University, he played his freshman season 2015 at Northwest Mississippi Community College, helping the Rangers win a National Junior College Athletics Association championship. In his 2 seasons with the Pirates, 2016, and of course last season, but taking last season into account here, he completed 174 of 304 pass attempts. That's 57.2% completion rating for 2,140 passing yards, 16 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. And despite the fact that East Carolina wasn't all that great, Minshew held his own. Once again, threw for over 2,000 yards, had a clean touchdown to interception ratio, helped 2 wide receivers total at least 500 yards receiving. Trevon Brown, 60 catches, 1,069 yards, 7 touchdowns. Devon Grayson, 59 catches, 886 yards, and 6 scores. Minshew, not the liveliest of arms, but can put the ball there, can throw receivers open, can target guys downfield. And once again, this is kind of a numbers game for Nick Saban. From 2007 to this past season, he's always wanted to have 4 quarterbacks, 4 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster. Now, of course, last year, that was not the case. Only had 3, Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones. Could have signed a guy in the 2018 class, a talented freshman. That did not happen, but Alabama did pull the graduate transfer route of getting Minshew. And I'm not saying that Minshew will come in and beat out Jalen Hurts and beat out Tua Tagovailoa and beat out Mac Jones. I mean, let's just be honest. He is going to be relegated to a clipboard, but at least to some extent, you just don't want to have the Alabama backup quarterback like a Phillip Sims or a Star Jackson or Parker McLeod or Luke Del Rio or David Cornwell, Cooper Bateman, the guys that just did not challenge, did not light a fire under the main quarterback in question, right? I mean, Gardner Minshew is going to at least light some type of fire, kind of like what Tua's doing right now, lighting the fire under Jalen. This past year, Tua came in to the national championship game in the second half, 14 for 24 passing for 166 yards, 3 touchdowns, the game winner to Devonta Smith to beat Georgia 26-23. Tagovailoa, the most valuable player as he should have been. And now you have media pundits, fans believing that not only is he, or he should be, the starting quarterback, but you got guys out there, the odds makers in Las Vegas, who are playing poker with dirty money, think that this guy is definitely going to be a front runner for the Heisman Trophy next season. I mean, that's the expectation simply for the Hawaiian Punch, for T squared, for double T in the morning, for Tua Tagovailoa. When I look at Jalen Hurts, He started 2 years as a quarterback, 26-2 as a starter. And a lot of people will say, look, man, you can put any type of quarterback with that run game Alabama has, with the receivers Alabama has, with the defense Alabama has, with the head coach Alabama has, and Nick Saban. You can put Ed, and Eddie at quarterback, and they'll win you a national championship. And I get it. And you might be right on that number. And the one knock on Jalen Hurts has been the inability to see the whole field in the passing game. But once again, Nick Saban will play up this quarterback battle until he's blue in the face. And we'll get to that part of the conversation in a different podcast segment. This is simply on Gardner Minshew and what he brings to the table. Don't think he beats out any of the three, Hurts, Tagovailoa, or Mac Jones. But what he does bring, and the three things I will mention. Number one, a competitive fire. And that's something that a lot of backup quarterbacks at Alabama, with the exception of Tagovailoa, did not have. A serious, nonstop, relentless competitive fire to sharpen yourself as well as push the competition to make them sharper. And I think Minshew does this. Once again, he wants to know the system. He wants to absorb himself in the process. He wants to play with the best, be around the best, be a part of a championship atmosphere, wants to be a coach in the event that the playing days do not add up. Now, let's keep in mind, you got some players that may not have the liveliest of arms still make it in the National Football League. I mean, look at Shane Matthews that came out of Florida in the 90s. He didn't have the liveliest arm at quarterback, but because he learned under Steve Spurrier, who was a Heisman Trophy winner at Florida in 1966, learned from Steve Spurrier, who was a Heisman Trophy winner, who understands offense, who had worked with a multitude of quarterbacks, and because of that Spurrier-type influence, Shane Matthews was able to hustle the system, and he landed a couple of NFL jobs. Really did. We even look at a guy like Tom Brady. Doesn't have the liveliest of arms, but because he's got the intelligence, because he's got the mindset, and because he knows how to maneuver with his arm, what is Tom Brady? A 5-time Super Bowl champion. So not a lot of times the most liveliest of arms don't – it's not the fact that the most liveliest of arms don't make it in the NFL, because some of them do. It's just that in this case, what Minshew brings to the table is that competitive fire. He wants to be the best. He wants to push. He wants to learn and be a part of a winning system and of a winning culture. Number two, I look at this experience. He's got 17 games in Division I football. Played 10 games last season. Played 7 games in 2016 for the East Carolina Pirates out of the American Athletic Conference. Now, the AAC is not like the Southeastern Conference. There's a big culture shock, right? Because the AAC, which used to be the Big East, which at one point in time the Big East had Miami and Virginia Tech in there was a different aura in the Big East at that time. The Big East that ended in 2003, I guess for football purposes, it prided itself on being a 10-11 win team, a 10-11 win conference, a conference that prided itself on getting to the national championship game and competing for national championships. As now the American Athletic Conference, it's going to take it a while to get back to that front, seeing how the SEC has become the conference that you are competing for. You're competing for national championships. You are competing to put a multiple amount of players in the NFL draft. You are competing to have the top-rated signing class each and every year. It's the Southeastern Conference that's doing those things. Now the Atlantic Coast Conference, the ACC, has done well. The Big Ten has done well. The Big 12 have their moments, but even with the exception of last year kind of being the down year, the complete down year for the conference as a whole, when you still think of the biggest, baddest, most marquee conference in college football, you tend to think of the SEC. But Gardner Minshew, once again, 17 games of experience in D1 ball, and he wants to prove that he could come in here, learn this system, absorb what's going on. And in the event of somebody getting hurt, once again, Alabama's going to try to avoid this, because especially after this past season when you had a whole bunch of defensive players go down, whether it was Deshaun Hand, whether it was Rashaan Evans, Sean Deion Hamilton, Trevon Diggs, Anthony Jennings, Mack Wilson, who was hurt, Christian Miller, Terrell Lewis. You had a number of injuries this past year, offense and defense. And you're going to try to avoid that type of bug. But even in the event that you cannot, you have a guy in Gardner Minshew who's got experience, can come off the bench as a scholarship guy and provide some sort of offense to help the cause under the likes of Michael Locksley, an offensive coordinator, Josh Gaddis as co-OC and wide receivers coach, and Dan Enos, I almost said Dan Warner for some reason. Dan Enos, who's the associate head coach and quarterbacks coach. So experience is number 2. The number 3 thing that, to me, is the biggest thing for Gardner Minshew what he brings to the table is his desire to learn the system, and also seeing how there are quite a few former Alabama players that, even though it did not quite work in the NFL, Nick Saban has a way of making room for you on his coaching staff, especially when you played for him. Minshew wants to absorb this in order to be a coach. He wants to get the fine tune inside the business of Nick Saban. And when you look at a lot of former players that got this eye-opening, this adventure, this venture here, first and foremost, you look at a guy like Denzel Duvall. Denzel Duvall, who was a former 4-star prospect in the 2011-2012 class, if I'm not mistaken, from Bastrop, Louisiana, played well as an outside linebacker, was a veteran player under Nick Saban, was a part of 2 national championships, 2012 and 2015. Did not work out for him in the NFL. Comes back to Alabama. What is he doing right now? He's the director of player personnel. You've got Geno Matias-Smith, who came into that 2012 class from Atlanta, Georgia. Had some good moments, had some bad moments. He's not a bad kid overall. I mean, did have a couple of DUIs, which that's nothing to be taken lightly, but not a guy that was in Nick Saban's doghouse in any sense of the word. Was somebody that got a tryout for the Washington Redskins, was a part of 2 national championships, 2012 and 2015. Pro football didn't work out for him. Comes back to Alabama. What is he doing? He is an off-field analyst or intern for the Crimson Tide. You look at a guy like Glenn Coffey, was the first 1,000-yard back in Alabama under Nick Saban in 2008. 1,383 rushing yards, if you remember. Did the NFL route with the San Francisco 49ers. That didn't pan out well the way he wanted to, but he goes to the military, was a paratrooper for the U.S. Army, then ends up trying to work his way back to the NFL. That doesn't work. He's right now a graduate assistant helping out with running backs on the Alabama staff. You've got Rob Ezell, who played for Alabama at wide receiver, has the funniest Nick Saban impersonation. If you have not checked that out, I would urge you to do so. Rob Ezell, offensive analyst for the Crimson Tide. And then also you have William Vallejos, who played on Alabama's offensive line. It's a part of that 2009 championship team. I believe he was also there in 2011. I will fact check that, but he was definitely a part of that 2009 championship team. Was an offensive analyst for the front line, the offensive lineman. And as of right now, he followed Brian Dable from Alabama to the NFL with the Buffalo Bills. So you've got a number of guys, Denzel Duvall, Geno Matias-Smith, Glenn Coffey, Rob Ezell, William Vallejos, that the NFL did not work for them, but because they came to Alabama, they played at Alabama, they absorbed the system, they learned under Nick Saban, they got the inside track into the business of coaching, the business of football. Nick Saban, not afraid to open up those doors, bring them back, and have them work on his staff. And that's exactly what Gardner Minshew can look to do. So running back over these again. Competitive fire, experience, and desire to learn the system, especially in the event that Minshew could be a coach in the making on the staff. The things that the graduate transfer from East Carolina University bring to this team. Very excited to see him come on the campus in May. Take another break here on In My Own Words, the podcast, Touchdown Alabama Magazine. Upon our return, we jump into the quarterback conversation between Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. Nick Saban talked about to ESPN's Chris Lowe the opportunity of playing both guys. I'm listing the pros and the cons of both. You don't want to miss this. Don't touch that dial, folks. Be right back. It's your boy, Stephen M. Smith, host of In My Own Words, the podcast. If you are a fan of this show, then I encourage you to subscribe to the Touchdown Alabama Magazine YouTube channel. Also follow the brand on Facebook, Twitter, and other forms of social media as we continue to bring you the best in Alabama football and Crimson Tide athletics.